Lock the doors, dim the lights, and step into the archive. I am the curator, and these are tonight's selections. I didn't notice the mirror the first day I moved in. The apartment was small. Just one bedroom, a narrow living room, and a tiny kitchen. Old building, old furniture, old everything. The landlord had told me the previous tenant left most of the furniture behind when he moved out. I didn't care much. I was just happy to find a cheap place to stay. The mirror was hanging on the wall in the hallway between the bedroom and the bathroom. Tall, almost reaching the floor. The frame was dark wood, scratched and worn from age. At first, it looked completely normal, just a regular mirror. But something about it always made me feel slightly uncomfortable. I didn't notice it immediately. Took a few days. Every time I walked past it at night, I felt like something about the reflection was delayed. Not obviously, just a fraction of a second. Like the reflection was catching up to me. The first time it really scared me was about a week after moving in. It was late. Around 1:30 a.m. I had just turned off the lights in the living room and was heading to my bedroom. The hallway was dark except for the light from the bathroom. As I walked past the mirror, I glanced at my reflection, and for a brief moment, I saw someone standing behind me, tall, just a dark shape in the reflection. I turned around instantly, but the hallway was empty. No one there. No sound, no movement, just the quiet apartment. I told myself it was just my imagination. Late nights can do strange things to your mind. So I ignored it. But the next night something similar happened again. I walked past the mirror, looked at my reflection, and for a split second, the reflection looked slightly different. Not wrong, just slower. When I raised my hand to scratch my head, my reflection followed. But a moment later than it should have. Like it was hesitating. I stared at the mirror for several seconds, trying to see if it would happen again. But everything looked normal, perfectly normal. Still, something about that mirror bothered me, so I decided to test it. The next night, I stood directly in front of it, just watching my own reflection. I waved my hand slowly. The reflection copied the movement perfectly. I leaned closer. The reflection leaned closer too. Everything looked normal until I blinked, because when my eyes opened again, the reflection was still blinking. A second later, my stomach tightened. I stepped back from the mirror, and that's when I noticed something else. Something much worse. In the reflection, the hallway behind me looked darker than it should have been. Almost like the light from the bathroom wasn't reaching it. And deep in that darkness, something moved. A shadow, slowly stepping closer. But when I turned around again, the hallway behind me was empty. That's when I decided to do something stupid. I pulled out my phone and started recording the mirror. I wanted to prove to myself that nothing strange was happening, that my brain was just playing tricks on me. So I placed the phone on a shelf facing the mirror and pressed record. Then I stood in front of it, watching my reflection. Nothing happened at first, just me standing there. Then after about 30 seconds, the reflection behind me moved again. This time much clearer. The shadow stepped closer, closer, until it was standing directly behind my reflection, right behind my shoulder. My heart started pounding, because I knew one thing for certain. There was no one behind me, but in the mirror, someone was standing there, watching me, and slowly, the reflection of the person behind me started raising its hand, reaching toward my shoulder. I froze. My eyes stayed locked on the mirror. In the reflection, the shadow behind me was still there, standing just inches away from my back. But I could feel the air behind me, cold, empty. There was no one there. Yet the mirror showed something different. The figure in the reflection slowly raised its hand toward my shoulder. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every instinct told me to move, to run, to turn around. But I forced myself to stay still, because I needed to know if what I was seeing was real. The hand in the reflection stopped just before touching my shoulder, hovering there, waiting. Then something even stranger happened. The reflection of my body began to move, but I hadn't moved. At first it was small, almost impossible to notice. My reflection's head tilted slightly to the side, just a few degrees, watching the shadow behind it. But my real head stayed perfectly still. My stomach dropped, because the reflection was now doing things I wasn't doing. I slowly lifted my hand. In real life, the reflection lifted its hand too, but it moved differently, slower, like it was copying me while thinking about something else. Then suddenly, the reflection stopped moving completely, even though my hand was still rising. I lowered my arm quickly, but the reflection didn't follow. It stayed frozen for a second longer, then slowly lowered its arm after me. A delayed reaction, but worse than before, like it had decided when to move. Not me. I stepped closer to the mirror, my breathing shallow now. The shadow behind my reflection was still there, standing perfectly still. Then the figure leaned closer to the reflection of my ear, like it was whispering something. I felt nothing in real life. No breath, no sound. But in the mirror, the reflection of me slowly nodded. Once, then twice. My blood ran cold, because I knew something was very wrong. I hadn't nodded. I hadn't heard anything. Yet the reflection acted like it was responding to someone. That's when my phone suddenly vibrated. The sudden noise made me jump. The phone was still recording. I picked it up and stopped the video. My hands were shaking, but I immediately opened the recording to check it. The video started normally, just me standing in front of the mirror. Then the moment came. The shadow appeared behind my reflection, clear as day, tall, dark, standing directly behind me. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to see its face, but the camera couldn't capture the details, just a dark shape. Then the video reached the part where the shadow leaned forward and whispered into my reflection's ear. But something in the recording made my chest tighten, because the reflection of me in the video was smiling, slowly, widening into a grin, at something behind it, something I couldn't see. And the worst part was, I knew for a fact I had never smiled. I replayed the video again and again, each time my stomach twisted more, because the reflection in the recording was clearly smiling. A slow, unnatural smile. But I knew something for certain. I had never smiled. Not once. I paused the video and zoomed in on the screen. The reflection of my face looked wrong. Not just the smile. Something deeper. My eyes in the reflection looked darker, almost hollow, like they were staring at something behind the camera. Not at the mirror, not at me, but something standing in the room. I turned around instinctively. The hallway behind me was empty. The apartment was silent again. But suddenly the mirror felt different, heavier, like it was watching me. I didn't want to stand there anymore. So I turned off the hallway light and walked into the living room, trying to convince myself everything was fine. Just my mind playing tricks. But something kept bothering me. The video. there was still something I hadn't checked. So I sat down on the couch and played the recording again. This time I watched the moment when I walked away from the mirror, because I clearly remembered leaving the hallway after recording. In the video, I saw myself stepping out of frame, leaving the mirror alone. The hallway became empty. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the quiet reflection of the dark hallway. Then suddenly, the reflection moved. Not me, the reflection. The version of me inside the mirror slowly stepped back into view, walking into the frame again. But I wasn't there. The hallway outside the mirror was empty. Yet inside the mirror, my reflection had returned, standing in the middle of the hallway, looking straight out of the glass. At the camera, my heart started racing as I watched the video. The reflection inside the mirror stood there for several seconds, perfectly still. Then it slowly raised its hand and pressed it against the inside of the mirror, like someone touching glass from the other side. The fingers spread slowly, dragging slightly down the surface. Then the reflection leaned closer, its face filling the entire mirror, and that horrible smile appeared again, wider this time, almost stretching too far across its face. Then it did something that made my blood run cold. It spoke. The video had no sound, but I could clearly see the reflection's lips moving, forming words, slowly, carefully. 3 words. I replayed the clip several times, trying to understand what it was saying. Eventually, I realized something terrifying. The reflection wasn't talking to the camera. It was talking to me, and the words it mouthed were, "Switch places tonight." At that exact moment, the lights in my apartment flickered. The hallway light turned on by itself. And from the living room couch, I could see the mirror again, at the end of the hallway. And for the first time since I moved in, the reflection in the mirror was not copying my movements, because the reflection inside the mirror was already standing there, waiting. I stared down the hallway at the mirror. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was shaking my chest, because the reflection inside the mirror was not copying me anymore. It was already standing there, perfectly still, waiting. The hallway light above it flickered softly, casting long shadows across the floor. And in the mirror, the version of me inside the glass slowly raised its head, looking directly toward the living room, toward me. But I hadn't moved. I was still sitting on the couch. Yet the reflection was watching me like it knew exactly where I was. The smile slowly returned to its face. That same wide, unnatural smile I had seen in the recording. Then it did something that made my stomach drop. It stepped closer to the glass, pressing both hands against the inside of the mirror, like someone trapped behind a window. The glass surface rippled slightly where its hands touched it, almost like water. My throat went dry, because mirrors aren't supposed to move like that. I slowly stood up from the couch. The reflection inside the mirror followed my movement. But again, it was delayed. A second too late, like it was trying to remember how to copy me. I took one step toward the hallway. The reflection took one step closer to the glass. Then another. I stopped moving, but the reflection didn't. Continued walking, until its face was only inches from the inside of the mirror, its dark eyes staring directly out at me. Then its lips moved slowly, just like in the video, forming the same 3 words. "Switch places tonight." The hallway light flickered again. For a moment, the entire apartment went dark. When the light came back on, the reflection was gone. The mirror showed only the empty hallway again. My normal reflection returned, standing there exactly where I was, perfectly normal, perfectly still. But something felt wrong, very wrong, because when I raised my hand to touch my face, my reflection didn't move. My blood ran cold. The reflection in the mirror stayed completely still, looking straight ahead, while I was clearly moving in front of it. Then slowly, the reflection inside the mirror turned its head, looking directly at me. The smile returned again, and suddenly I understood something terrifying. The reflection wasn't trying to escape the mirror. It didn't need to, because the moment I looked away earlier, even just for a second, we had already switched places. The thing inside the mirror slowly raised its hand and waved at me. From the other side, from inside the glass. And that's when I realized something worse. The reflection of the apartment behind it looked different. The furniture wasn't the same. The lighting looked darker, like it belonged to a different version of the room. A place where someone else had been living. Someone who looked exactly like me. Then the reflection leaned closer to the glass and whispered something I could barely hear, but I'll never forget the words. It said, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of your life." And just before the hallway light went out again, I saw something behind the reflection, standing deeper inside the mirror world. Several other figures, all watching, all waiting for their turn.